We're on. Good afternoon. I hope you all had a great lunch. I apologize for being a little bit late. We're having a problem with one of the visuals here, but I think we resolved it. I'm going to start with a presentation, but let me first introduce our panel here. Right next to me, Lisa Koenigsberg. I got it right. President and founder of the Initiatives of Art and Culture. Raluca Anghel. Got it right too. Head of External Affairs at Natural Diamond Council, and Martin Leake, Special Advisor of Precious Stones at the Dubai Multi-Commodity Center, the DMCC. We're going to take a look at how diamonds are behaving in the market today. The perspective is going to be primarily American, because the majority of lab-grown is consumed and purchased in the United States. And in the past few years, it became very obvious that we're going in different directions. From the start, from the get-go, these were two very different, chemically, technically, they are the same, but everything else is otherwise. So we're looking at price and cost, obviously. That's the thing that everybody's talking about. As a result of that, revenue is going in different directions. Pricing trends, what is driving that? How is it happening? Why is it happening? What are the pressures? How goods are priced? What are the methodologies that are used in that? Gross margins and profit, and gross profit. We're looking at, because of the differences in costs and prices, et cetera, that's where that goes. Consumer demographics is, in many ways, the most important component and what's driving this bifurcation of this industry. Marketing is different. Demand drives are different, primarily because the demographics differ so much. So naturally, with everything being so different, it would have been a surprise if they would have taken the same trajectory, and they're not. So let's take a look at, we'll start with something fairly simple. This is a measure of unit sales in the United States the past 4.5 years. And I think in many ways it won't surprise you. These peaks are December. These smaller peaks are February and May. Mother's Day, Valentine's Day and Mother's Day, and they are kind of repeated to a limited degree with lab-grown, but let's just look at lab-grown alone for a moment. And I think you'll find that this to be very telling. So it starts slow. This is COVID, this is the lockdown, this is March of 2020. But if you look at this trend, you see that there is a pickup. Up until now, it was kind of flattish, but there is a pickup that started, and it really took off during 21. After that, and this is kind of, a series of straight lines. This changes. So instead of being something that early adapters would buy almost and disconnect from other events because they're buying it because it's cool, it's nice, it's new, it's different, it's a departure from the usual, all of a sudden they go back to this behavior that we see with natural, right? Let's go back to natural for a moment. You see all these are happening because of buying occasions, all these ups and downs. And they repeat themselves because the jewelry industry in general is a very cyclical business. So it wasn't until a couple of years ago when the lab-grown sector kind of departed, left the area of being early adopters or the early seed stage of a new product and became, pardon the word, normalized. By the way, we're looking at unit sales, but this is the same kind of behavior that we see in terms of revenue. That being said, so this is the big first departure that we're seeing from between the two. We're looking here at, if we will, the darker blue is natural, So you see there's so this is just a look at 1 carat's average price. This is loose rounds. And I just looked at everything that was going through our system. So it's about $6,000 recently for natural, more than triple that for 1 carat, more than triple that for 2 carats, and then so much more for 3 carats. The price differentiation increases primarily because there's a little bit of rarity, it has to be said, with lab grown. It's more difficult to get bigger goods requires the only difference is time. There's not a rarity in the sense that, do I find it or I don't find it as with natural. The only other difference between natural and lab grown in this regard is in manufacturing. The cost of manufacturing is much lower, and this shows you a much slower process here of price increases. But the margins between them are only growing, so this is 86% below, but this is only part of the story in that regard. None of this is surprising, right? You may not be familiar with specific figures, but look at this. You can buy today, as I said, current retail prices, you can buy today a 3-carat stone for about $4,000, which is still a lot less than, about 30% less than the cost of a a natural 1-carat stone. And this is telling. This is one of the main drivers. Why is this one of the main drivers? In the United States, as I said, this is the majority of business. In the United States, the consumer is very, very price-oriented. Now, you may say to yourself, well, consumer is price-oriented everywhere, but if you think about jewelry and the way it's being sold, for example, here in Europe, it's very design-oriented. I want something that looks like this. I love this style. That's where people go. In Asia, and when I say Asia, I mean everything from Japan to the Middle East, in fact, all the way out to Morocco, it's all about value. Value and price are not the same thing. So if the value is not there, people won't buy it. And this is one of the difficulties retailers and wholesalers have in China, in Pakistan, in the United States, in India, etc. The other element I think that is very telling in this regard is if we look at an average expenditure. An average expenditure is a very simple calculation. I take total revenue and I divide it by the number of stones. So what we see here is that the average expenditure on natural is fairly high. Let me tell you something about loose goods in the U.S. retail market. So first of all, it's primarily a specialty jeweler thing. It does not happen at, say, Macy's. Primarily set in engagement rings. Roughly about 20% of a jeweler's business. Some more, some less. So this is a very important component of the industry. A diamond engagement ring is the most important subcategory, jewelry category in the diamond industry. In the jewelry industry. In terms of income, in terms of revenue, in terms of consistency. I know that people will continue to get married, so I know that this is going to continue to happen. 77% difference between the average expenditure of one and the other, and then, there you go, look at the difference in size. If you follow the American market closely, if you're a wholesaler that sells diamonds, you know that the typical loose diamond, natural, that an American retailer purchases, I see a retailer in the crowd, at least one, is about, for decades, it was about 1 carat. Am I wrong? I am wrong? No, it is right. Usually just below 1 carat because you can get a slightly lower price. But now we are at a much higher average. The real average is around 130 something. So this is just by average expenditure, we get 140. But what we're seeing is and this is part of the discussion we're going to have in a minute, there's an interplay between lab-grown and natural. One of the things that lab-grown pricing allows a consumer to do is spend a little bit less, but get a bigger diamond. And that created a trend of, let's get a bigger diamond. So where we are right now is that the natural business is actually benefiting from the presence, in this regard, from the presence of lab-grown in the market. 2 carats is the standard. We're seeing right now that 3 carats, we're talking here VSs, so this is high quality, high color, EFG color items. This is where this market is going, and it's only increasing. If I go too fast, I just want to leave time for my panel. So if I go too fast, slow me down. So what are we looking here in terms of what's happening with natural diamond? And I just want to do a quick comparison. So diamond engagement ring sales year over year, so this is revenue, is down a little bit. Average transaction value is up. Why? Bigger diamonds. Market share, so this is for the first half of 24, 54%. This is measuring units. I can tell you that a couple of nights ago, I got the data for August. It's already 50, market share versus lab-grown is already down to 52. In other words, the trajectory is that pretty soon, probably by the end of the year, we're going to look at a 50-50 sort of market for diamond engagement rings. Primarily diamond engagement, this is what's driving it. If we look at lab-grown, so sales value is up just a smidget, but sales unit is up dramatically. And the big difference just comes from the difference in pricing, because a lot more units are being sold, and obviously the price is down. Average transaction value, almost down 20%. It depends on what is it exactly that you're measuring. On average, we're looking at 18%. This is not the loose. Loose is down even more. So this is one area that is, keep this number in mind. I'm going to touch on this in a moment. Let's look at the entire market. So a number of trends to notice. You see that unit sales are constantly rising. This is already a little bit higher for August. This is about 14.5, nearing 15%. Value, notice the value is almost always, the average, this is share, right? Is always higher than units. In other words, if you look at the general population that takes advantage of lab-grown, they're willing to spend a little bit more, which is very surprising because if prices are declining and it's not such a big product, the United States is about 14%, as we said, is market share. But now, prices are, so the rate of price declines is such that the increase in the average, in the number of units sold is not catching up with this. So now this is already equal to this, and once again, I looked at August numbers, it's already a little bit lower. But if we look only at diamond engagement rings, and we'll treat diamond engagement rings as a universe that includes 2 products, one is natural, the other one is lab-grown, look what happens over here. So first of all, well, there's a constant increase in demand. So as I said, this is at around 48% right now, but value is constantly below. And currently, when we're nearing 50%, we're looking at about a quarter of the market by value. These 2 numbers start to tell us what's driving this market. The diamond engagement market caters to a very specific audience, to a very specific demographic. At the same time, this is the most important, this is about, depends on how you count it, anywhere between 12 to, diamond engagement rings are anywhere between 12 to 17% of diamond jewelry sales in the United States. It's the most important item. Let's look at how this is happening. The American market is about 85% of the market. Of the global market, 30-something and younger. So the average age of getting engaged, of getting married in the United States is 29, right? 28 for women, 30 for men. And this is the market that is buying lab-grown. Now, why is this market? So, of course, you know, we can talk about issues such as their financial situation. You still have your, you're paying off your tuition. You have a car loan. You have a wedding and an engagement and a honeymoon ahead of you. And then you're just about to do one of your biggest purchases of your life, buying your first home. When you walk into a store today and you look at who is buying an engagement ring, it's never the guy alone. It used to be the guy alone, and then it used to be the guy with his beloved's sister, mother, best friend, a group of friends from college. Today, it's them going in together. The previous format meant that the guy buys something. Doesn't matter how they got to deciding what he buys, but then he presents a final decision to her, and she looks at it and she thinks, okay, he's spending money on me. In his mind, he knows that he needs to get something that looks right, but he also wants to make sure that he is demonstrating his love to her through money. When they walk in together, the mindset is very different. The mindset then is, you know what, we are spending this together, we have all of these expenses ahead of us, maybe we should cool down. This brings down the average price, which results in what we saw before in a 25% revenue instead of almost 50. They're college educated, so this is the smart thing. We are pro the environment, it's new, it's exciting, etc. They're price oriented, as we said. Showy. Michelle, do you agree with me that they're showy? You do? Okay. So here's the thing, you know, there's the one-upmanship going on. My best friend got a 2 carat, I'm going to get a 2.5. My mom has a SI, I'm going to get a VS. So, you know, showing that you have it is important. Same but different. This is an ongoing trend in the market. Well, I want the same, but let's do a local adjustment. This is the failure of the natural diamond industry. They were not exposed to natural diamond marketing. Pardon me, Raluca. And as I said, the engagement ring is the battleground. So this is what bothers retailers, right? Up until now, we were talking about consumers and we're talking about wholesalers. They have a falling average transaction value. They have a shrinking gross margin. Their revenue is eroding. And therefore, they're going back to naturals. What did we have with Signet? At Signet, Signet is moving away. They're saying this very explicitly. We're moving away from lab-grown towards natural. 2 ways of doing this: educating their clients, their sales staff. And the second is, if you go to one of their sites, their websites, Blue Nile, etc., and you pick a diamond and it's lab-grown, there is a little notice below it, if you scroll down a little bit, that says, we can't guarantee the long-term value of this stone. Others say, there are some retailers, brick and mortar, that say there's no buybacks. If you will buy a natural, there's a buyback. Many say, not all of them, many say there are no buybacks. In other words, quietly, easily saying, we don't have a whole lot of trust in this product. It's a way of moving them away from it. And once again, diamond engagement ring, so I'm kind of stuck on that motto. So I had a meeting with a bunch of guys in the lab-grown industry, and they asked me, so what should we do? I said, well, just reducing price doesn't do it. I understand that reducing price is kind of, you feel that you're forced to do that. But at the end of the day, you have to provide retailers. So the retailers don't see a financial benefit in that. Right? We said that 20% decline in price. If you had a 20% decline in price, you need to increase your sales the following year by 25%. Think about how difficult it is either to bring in a 25% more customers or to just sell more product, more items per client. It's insanely difficult. So what lab-grown people need to do is find a way to make it sexy again for retailers, and they have the incentive. So where's this heading? So first of all, continued rise in unit sales, continued decline in price of natural. We're seeing a drying up of inventories, primarily in India, but in other places as well. So we should expect an increase in price. But still, we won't get to the peaks that we had just 2 years ago. Both are expected to have challenges, but as we said, there are different underlying causes for what's happening there, so there are differences. Both require a lot of attention that they're not getting right now. Not enough of it. The natural diamond industry has the benefit of having, De Beers, and De Beers, spent a lot of money in the past, and the lab-grown industries does not have one strong body that does that. So they're missing out on category promotion. The main focus for marketing, get these people, these 30-year-olds. In fact, it's not an issue of just the 30-year-olds. This is everything, all the demographics, younger, right? Anything who's younger is not exposed to a whole lot of generic marketing. So the solution is branding. So Pandora was a product of $200 to $500 per item, catered primarily to teenagers. Adding lab-grown, so the cost of adding lab-grown is negligible. But now they have a product that sells from $1,000 to $2,500. So their gross margin leaped. Pandora in general, think about what they do. Well-made, well-designed. They change design frequently. So I see my daughter, she walks into a Pandora store, it's like, Dad, we got to buy this. It's like, why do we have to? Let's, think about it. It's like, no. We're going to come back in a few days, it's going to be gone. So even my 15-year-old, almost 16-year-old, knows that Pandora constantly changes their inventory. So this is something and plus the demographics are a lot older. For natural, I think long-term we should be high-end, high-price, rare, aspirational. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to compete with lab-grown. C'est tout. Here we have, thank you. I want to start with Martin, if I may. So you're sitting at the DMCC. We spoke earlier, you said that about 4% of diamonds that come through, can we talk about this?
Yep, it's public number.
About 4% of diamonds that come through Dubai, import and export.
By value.
Per year.
By value per year. So our figures for 2023
yes.
$1.6 billion of lab-grown diamonds, which is a 126% increase.
Mm-hmm.
That's import and export of rough and polished lab-grown. To compare that to natural diamonds, we have about $38 billion of imported and exported rough and polished natural diamonds. So it's about 4%.
About 4%.
Of the business, yeah.
So looking at that and looking at the market, and you've been in the market for many years, what do you think is the perspective in the midstream at these two products? Are they at odds? I mean, is there a competition going on there? Are they eating at each other's territory?
So, obviously it's nice to try to create an environment of us versus them.
Every story needs good drama.
But the way I see it is and a word I like to use is co-opetition, where we look for a common enemy between the two different industries. If we have it us versus them and we start throwing mud, everyone's going to get dirty. That's not going to benefit anybody in the jewelry business. So look for opportunities to collaborate and also compete. Competition is good. Competition drives innovation. We can't be too complacent. One thing we need to understand about the lab-grown industry is it's a technology business, and it will evolve like a technology business. And maybe it will open up new markets for people who are driven by the desire for technology and the younger generation, that later on in life may have bought into the diamond dream and may choose to upgrade. So I don't see it as, for me, the common enemy, I've described this a lot before, the common enemy is when you choose to get married is because it's so confusing to buy a diamond and a piece of diamond jewelry, you go and spend the money on a honeymoon. That means that we've all lost. And we need to look at how do we capture that person back. And it may be that they want to start off with lab grown and then they'll upgrade to natural. It may be that, you know, that area is an opportunity for us to work together. So not us versus them, but combined. We're in the jewelry industry.
You started your answer by saying competition. So cooperation and competition, but it needs to be...
Yeah, I mean, competition is a word in the economic language. It comes out of game theory. It's not a zero-sum game. Mm-hmm. It's looking at what you can both benefit from whilst competing at the same time. How do you collaborate and how do you compete? We see it in other industries, the car industry, the pharmaceutical industry, for example, where people pull together to see how you can make general advances overall. And that's why I don't like saying it's one or the other. We're in this together. So we need to look at how do we capture that market share for the jewelry business, because that's where it's all driven from. It may be some people can't afford the natural diamond straight away when they're in their 30s, as you've described.
Actually, you bring up an interesting point, because forever and ever, with the exception of a very minute percentage, very small share, engagement rings were diamonds, set with diamonds. In the past 5 years, we're seeing that this is slowly declining. So if it was 99.5%, it declined to 98% share. Now we're sitting in a little below 97%. So in other words, what you're seeing is that over time, people are starting to look at alternatives to both, to diamonds in general. So this idea of a common, pardon me for using the term, a common enemy, kind of drives that.
Yeah, and you know, we want to grow the overall size of a pie.
Yeah. Raluca, so we talked, this is industry talk, sort of, right? So here are the figures, but at the end of the day, those that really drive the market are consumers.
Absolutely, and that's very, very often forgotten. You mentioned the presence of marketing, and I said, oh, sorry, look, 100%, that's what we've been saying all the time. So as the Natural Diamond Council, the most important thing that we can do is always talk to the consumers, non-stop, so wherever they look for info. We need investment, further investment in this category marketing for natural diamonds. So natural diamonds are immediately the synonym with the most versatile luxury gemstone, the oldest stone you'll ever touch, older than some of our stars. So this is the message that never needs to be forgotten, or sorry, I'll rephrase that, should never be forgotten by any consumers. And we can see from all of our focus groups, we can see that consumers absolutely love diamonds. We can see how they engage with our content. It's a love that is there, and it's certainly a great association that they get with their brands, their style, their representation. We see so much mentioning in pop culture. It's enough for you to just go on your social media or on Instagram and you'll automatically see what's going on, from the Venice Film Festival, your Cannes défilés, the ultimate final cherry on top of the cake to any outfit out there is definitely a very, very beautiful piece of natural diamond jewelry. And if we don't invest in that advertising in such a precious category, you forget that consumers' tastes always change. If you're not there, if they don't remember you, if you don't associate yourself with their images, you will lose that battle. So for that, we need further investment in this category marketing. whether it's through collaborations with us. We create marketing materials to be used by retailers. Any organization that is facing consumers have the possibility to come to us, and we can share a lot of these materials with them. Educational materials for sales forces. There, we definitely don't do, we don't get involved in other gemological conversations. We really want to keep it at the level of storytelling. Any support that we can provide is crucial. And then we were discussing on a panel earlier about impact. How you share the storytelling of that impact with consumers is it's an absolute game changer. And we can see consumers wanting, asking questions, interacting differently. So if you have your staff that immediately interacts with consumers, having this material at their disposal and knowing this is fundamental to doing that. So I'm very much aligned. Increased advertising for this category is crucial.
Put your money forward.
Yes.
Lisa, in a way, we're talking about value, right? But not price. I mentioned that Asia is very value-oriented, but at the end of the day, to sort of promote diamonds, you know, and it doesn't matter if we're talking about lab-grown or natural, there has to be the perception that I'm buying something that is valuable. How would you define value?
Rather differently, actually, than this conversation has been defining it. Because, sort of taking a leaf out of Gaetano's book, in thinking about this conversation this morning, I pulled up on Google definitions of value. And the first ones that come up for noun are the regard that something is held to deserve, the importance, worth, or usefulness of something. And then the second one for noun is principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what is important in life. The first definition, the verbs are more associated with money, and this is from the Oxford Languages Dictionary. Only when I go down below to a subordinate definition is value, definition of, and meaning, the monetary worth of something, the market price. So one of the things that I would think about, because everyone is concerned with how much something costs, is what are the things that impact that for which you are paying? Because often, material is material. We are talking here about the cost of units of material, but often what we're buying is a finished piece of jewelry. And what are some of the things that can impact the price, thereby impacting the value as it's being defined here? And some of those values, because I see them as values, beyond, and it's not that I think it's unimportant. I think responsible practice and responsible sourcing is extremely important, but a lot of attention has been given to it. So I'm going to not put that first. And I'm going to say, if I may, some of the things include artisanry, design, success of the piece, regional taste. So I want something oval. I'm not seeing any ovals. I'm seeing squares. That's not what I want, or to be more sort of correct in diamond parlance, you know, I don't want a brilliant cut. I want something else. Am I seeing it? Maybe in one part, if we're talking about the United States, maybe it's more common to see people opting for brilliant. They want something else in another part of the country where there's a different perspective on things. Can they get that? But then there are other things like, I'm going to use this word provenance, but I'm using it more broadly than I would strictly mean it. And to give two attributes, One is, who made the ring? About 2 months ago, we had a conference in New York, and we had a panel on the diamond market, and it was both with lab-grown participants and natural participants, both of whom were bemoaning the state of the market. And one of the things that each category maintained was that building and forgive me for this word, because they're maison, they're atelier, etc., but building a brand which adds value and which has consistent look, arguably, or a patina is important. Arguably, there's provenance in other ways. Often it refers to what I'll call antique/vintage auction material, but not necessarily. And that can be where something comes from, but in addition to the responsible practice element or complemented by it. So I'm not sure that I've answered your question, but I would say, to me, value has a lot of subsidiary components. If our ultimate yardstick is dollars, euros, what have you, currency, it's still comprised of many facets. And the other thing is that if we're going to go back to the discussion of unit price, and we're going to talk about the markets for diamonds, whether it be lab or natural, and we're talking about the health of a category, one of the things that seems to me important is expanding actually beyond and thinking of creative ways to use the stone and to stimulate that demand. Because the dominance of not even wedding as a category, but the engagement ring, I think is perhaps something that could be augmented with further products, further thought as to the milestone occasions that can be marked by the diamond, and perhaps beginning with thinking of the engagement ring as the beginning of the wedding jewelry that is built in the life of a couple. That's a reductive approach, but
Yeah, and actually you did answer, I think, the question on what is value, because in
Can I
many ways-
add to that? I think one, like pink elephant in the room, value is defined by rarity. So I think we do have a big, a big situation where we absolutely need to clarify, and I think that's one of the sort of common issues, and it can come back and affect us and affect the industry very much, is actually understanding of what both products are. What's the sort of positioning that you want to have within the industry and for consumers? And it's paramount to just define the two, because we're talking about a natural gemstone created 1 to 3 billion, 3.5 actually billion years old. There's the Canadian diamond, one of the oldest diamonds in the world, are around that age. Oldies, but definitely goldies. And then you have a manufactured product that is produced in what's possible unlimited capability. There is absolute place in the market for both, 100%, and that's certainly something that we need to look to expand and definitely get to position them in a correct way. Means the consumers will be able to make the purchase that will keep them happy and still invested within the jewelry industry as opposed to others. But the clear definition of value placement, that needs to be done in a proper way. And for that, disclosure is essential, understanding what products are, because to me, simple conversation on price is the biggest consumer confidence issue that we can tap into. Just looking at price absolutely does not do the industry justice or the product. So I think we just need to,
Lisa,
yeah.
very much.
we have to go beyond. And
The other thing I want, in response to what Raluca was saying, or to add perhaps to it, is that this concept of rare, meaning the age, etc., versus the opposite would be non-rare. there are attributed values. So rare may be scarce, rare may be natural, rare may be born of time. Those are attributes. Those things may all attract somebody. One may be more attractive to somebody. Just as the flip side, which would be going into what you referred to earlier and spoke about, is the greenwashing element, if you will. Something is or isn't more responsible. But all of these are attributed values that contribute to whatever yardstick you're going to use. And the point you made about colored stones, I think, is something that's well worth taking into account, because of yore, engagement rings were often colored, or wedding rings, and that's something else to look at.
Absolutely.
And with a whole different set of issues, including emotive power that's different with color than with quote-unquote white, which, yes, is a color, but...
I got to admit that I have I'm not sure where we're seeing more and more color stones in engagement rings. Part of it has to do with, let's depart from the old, right, from the diamonds, but there's also, if you look at the way, if you look at textile designs, right, clothing, you see that in the last few years we have a lot more color. It's a lot, pardon the term, busier designs, a lot more floral designs, and that is sort of a taste, a cultural taste that is migrating a little bit.
Well, you know, the fashion historian part of me would take issue with your categorizations of what people are wearing, because if you go back to the 60s and the 70s, you can think about
floral,
Pucci,
yes.
for example, Lily Pulitzer, which is the diametric opposite, but nonetheless with a vivid palette. Coming into the 80s, Saint Laurent, the saturated palette, it wasn't just black and the tuxedo suit. But I think one of the things is that there's an awareness of the emotional power of color, the associative power of color. But I also want to go back to something Raluca was saying and connect it to marketing, which is that Pantone has done a really great job of further accentuating their voice in a predictive marketplace.
Yeah.
And whether that's a response to or a catalyst for, I mean, I have a daughter, she said, "Mom, this is what I think I want. It's not a diamond. Sorry, mine is."
No, I mean, these are cultural
Give me her
shifts.
number. I'll call her.
Martin, let's talk about some of the lessons that we can learn from the brief history of these two elements and the competing. At the end of the day, they are competing currently.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed that conversation, and I think there are lessons that we can all learn, again, in the spirit of co-opetition. We did a lab-grown diamond symposium last year. There is a report which can be found at the front. Anyone wants to copy, just come and see me. And we looked at the lab-grown diamond industry quite deep, in a deep dive. We have to remember it's a technology business. It's not scarce. It's not got the history. However, that means that you can do new things with it. You can be more creative with it. You can cut a hole in it and make it a ring completely out of diamond. You could never do that out of a natural diamond.
There is a jewelry manufacturer that took lab-grown and just drilled a hole through, ran a string through it, and now it's a necklace.
You can do more bespoke things with it.
Yes.
Yeah, because you can't do that with natural diamonds because of the costing currencies of it. The other thing which we really drill down into is, because it's a technology play, move away from component selling. What do I mean by component selling? Adding up the costs of your unit pieces to be the final product. When you buy perfume, you don't ask how much did the perfume cost to make it. When you buy a handbag, you don't ask how much was the leather involved in it. So move away from that, sell the art. We kept saying, stop selling paint, sell the painting. Move away from the value of the individual pieces and move towards the value of the art that you're creating. The other thing about lab-grown diamonds is they can be quite fun because you can experiment. You know, the younger generation do a lot of tattoos these days. And when you do a tattoo, you can bespoke it to be a personal piece. You can do that with lab-grown, but you can eventually aspire to have that in the real thing in natural diamonds.
I spoke with the British jewelry designer Stephen Webster about lab-grown, and he asked me, how come they don't make skulls?
Yeah.
They may.
Well, exactly.
Can I just say one thing about what Charles said, which is that, in a way, what he was speaking about with regard to perfumes and handbags, that was kind of what I was driving at with regard to the development of a brand, because one of the things that's interesting is how many, for example, jewelers go into perfume, and part of it is because what the phenomenon of an elevated, quote, brand can absorb. And I think that's a great point, as is what you can do with them. Several years ago, I saw a phenomenal necklace that came from Alter, which is a lab-grown grower and purveyor in the States. But the thing about it was like a celestial constellation. And it would have been enormously challenging to put that together, arguably. Where that fell in the spectrum of kind of jewelry, I'm not sure. But it was a spectacular piece, very inventive.
And we can use it also to experiment with different supply chain models, the integrated supply chain models that we're seeing. Focus on design, focus on being fun, rather than taking us all so seriously about what we're not. Yeah? So there's an opportunity, again, in that spirit of collaborating and competing, to actually try to do new things and be innovative.
In a lot of our conversations, we get back to the fact that this is a technologically driven product. Is there a chance, especially considering the challenges on the part of the growers and the manufacturers in this regard, that once a breakthrough allows lab-grown to be used for technological purposes?
Like a chip, you mean?
For example.
They use for chips, just to clarify, for technological reasons, no?
Absolutely. So do you see, I mean, this is what Element 6 does, right, primarily. Do you see a scenario where lab-grown as an industry will rather focus on the applications are technological rather than, make jewelry?
So again, at our symposium, we had an eminent scientist from Madras University in India, where the Indian government is spending a lot of money on research and development in lab-grown industry, lab-grown diamonds. And he says, this is a material science dream. It's the ultimate material. The fantastic properties that we all celebrate in diamond jewelry from natural is, for a material scientist, what they can only dream. It's biologically inert. It has fantastic resistivity, conductivity properties. It's going to be in semiconductors. It's going to be in heat sinks. It's going to be in 5G base stations. It's going to be in power converters in Teslas. Okay? The reason a PlayStation, if everyone plays PlayStation, the reason they're so big is all to do with heat dissipation. Lab-grown diamonds solve that. So ultimately, there is a technology play in it. Yeah? But at the moment, they need to generate the revenue to fund that research and development.
And that's really the question. I mean, from a business perspective, is there any chance that just because of those revenues, it will be?
For high-quality lab-grown diamonds, it will be the semiconductor and the technology which takes all that stuff away. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
In effect, though, what you're saying does exist. So, for example, and again, specificity can be both a saintly thing and the devil's refuge, but there is a company called Ether, which was in the business of producing lab-grown stones. They have sold the lab-grown stones portion of their business, and in effect, they have come out with a new name, and what they're doing is focusing on their technology. The same thing with, I believe it's Greenwich diamonds. So and early on, when I was talking with a group that had invested in a lab-grown company, one of the reasons that the investor gave me, so this is not my reason, but was that the technology is so powerful and that it was viewed by the group that made the investment as jewelry being a high-margin place in which to develop that technology. It doesn't mean that everything Charles is saying about fun, exploration, and all the rest of it. Pardon?
Martin.
Oh, my God. So sorry.
Okay.
That's
Forgive
okay.
me.
I've
Sorry,
been called
everybody.
worse.
Horrible grief.
That's his nickname on his
Yeah.
PlayStation.
That's what we call him when he's not listening. That was our secret. I'm sorry.
Anyway, very gracefully done, but I'm embarrassed. But it doesn't mean that a lot of what he isn't saying, but that's not the case. But I think you're already seeing this.
Yes.
The incredible applicability and the fact that that's being employed, and the shift in where some of these companies are putting some of their energy.
Yes. Well, I think one of the biggest issues that growers are facing is that today they are not, as a standalone, it's not a viable business anymore. Partially, it has to do with the fact that their, as a share of revenue of their top line is in R&D is so large. I mean, it's anywhere between 15 to 20%. That's killing their business. So their ability to get to that holy grail of technological applications that still don't, the interesting ones, the heat sinks, don't exist today yet. But so let me, because we are at the very tail end, in a sentence or two, can you, each one of you, tell me where do you think the market will be? This is the question I always get, so I need, please feed me. What will the market be in 5 years from now for each of these? Who wants to take the first stab? Martin, you.
I'll do that. I think the industry, and I'm talking the industry holistically, lab-grown and natural, is at a very interesting point in its trajectory. We talk about the different challenges and the stress and the pressure that the industry's in. And I think we need to take a step back and look at it, which is what we're going to be doing in Dubai in November. Commoditization is an evil word in diamonds, okay? Because as soon as you commoditize something, the price is only going to go in one direction. And too often we're selling certificates, we're selling a commodity. We're not selling the final product. We don't want to be in the paint business. We want to be in the painting business. We want to be selling that art. So therefore we need to focus a lot more on design, a lot more on the value creation that we're doing, on the storytelling, and much less looking internally at all the problems that the industry is faced with. So that's where I would like to see our focus.
Raluca?
Natural diamonds, top choice in all consumers' minds with regards to other discretionary products. So above experiences, traveling, other accessories, definitely the most versatile accessory, the forever companion of all the moments that you want to gladly talk to your friends and family about. That's the place for natural diamonds if we all invest properly in advertising.
Lisa, your thoughts?
What I would hope is that we would see a world in which artisanry, craft, and design are celebrated as complements for responsible practice and sourcing, and that we gave a leg up to the marriage of creative vision and responsible practice on the one hand, so that would be the natural, and on the other hand, that we encouraged creativity, and both in terms of design, but also in terms of use with regard to lab-grown. So I would see them almost as two different worlds, if you will, each of which exploring, but also I would love to see so many more uses for diamonds than, if you will, not simply, it's not a bad thing, but than being confined primarily to the engagement ring. So that's what I would hope to see. What we will see, this is a conservative industry, but I hope we will see those things.
Actually, it's a very good, so I'm thinking, what would I say after you? And one of the first things I would like to say, and it's kind of a cliche in the market, I would like to see a lot more creativity, right? That's always the call. Lab grown gives that opportunity, and maybe that's part of the niche that it will fill in the future. But I would like to see really a lot more investment in, it's another term that I hate, educating the consumer. Every time I open the newspaper, a website, a news site, and there's an article about the diamond industry, I always make a point of reading the comments. And the amount of comments that are derogatory, and De Beers is controlling the market, lab grown is crap, this is this. I mean, a lot of people are saying with a lot of conviction things that we know that are just not true. And I think that there's a lot of uprooting we need to do. We need to take a lot of this out to make it a lot easier to reach value, creativity, and move the entire product forward.
But Edan, I think that education of the consumer absolutely comes from within the industry, and this is where you have intentional
It's the
action.
industry's responsibility.
Absolutely. Be fair, be clear, absolutely be proud of the product that you're representing. You're representing that, that's aligned to you. Be happy with whatever you're putting out there on the market, but be fair and definitely be transparent. That's the only way you can get those
Well, one of the questions that I
consumers well
have here
educated.
that we didn't get to is the bashing. Does it hurt the industry? Is it so obviously it's not.
Yeah, I'm absolutely the biggest fan for a race to the top, not a race to the bottom. So
Yeah.
I think, you know, you can only
Morally.
hit, absolutely, it's instrumental. You talk about the things that you can control, you improve the experiences that you can improve, that you do that yourself, but for me, it's the lack of appropriate disclosure that is a massive problem in this moment, and it is distracting from various opportunities, for sure. They're out there.
I always say, when you advertise a vegetarian restaurant, you don't advertise it by saying what we don't do. Yeah, you advertise it for what it represents, for value, okay? So we need to focus on the benefit that all this does to all the communities involved in it.
Yeah.
The other thing is that if you're talking about the consumer, we always say, what is the consumer saying? And then we say the consumer needs more education. How do we reconcile those things? It is our job to lead. If you believe in something, shout it, just in the same way that if you're selling a design or if you are selling a new setting, you put it out there. Just as we would lead with aesthetics or a new design or a new line, so we proclaim, whichever category it is, that which is positive about the category. And if it's with regard to responsible practice and such, why wait for somebody to tell you it's important? Tell them now. And let them echo it.
And take the lead. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to my panel. I found it educational. They deserve a round.